Okay, so the title of my sermon today is I Will Be the Joy. I've never given a sermon before, so you'll have to bear with me. I wasn't sure what to talk about, but I felt since about maybe November last year that I should offer something. I remember someone telling me it's a good goal to try and do one sermon a year. So this is one of my bucket lists for 2023. So I started this new year with a prayer that 2023 would be a year of tears of joy for Heavenly Parent. There were different experiences I had up until the end of 2022 that led me to say that prayer, so I'm going to share a bit of that. And it's now evolved into this, I will be the joy. And I'm also going to share how it evolved into this. So let's begin. Humility before Heavenly Parent. So, in November 2022, I'm gonna share two stories for this. One where I received an answer from God, and one where I didn't. So, the first one is in November 2022. I was praying for an answer on something. I needed to make a decision. I said, God, these are my options. I told God, this and this and this. Please show me which one. And I prayed and read 20K for a few days, and I felt I had received my answer. And then a few days later after this, I shared it with someone close to me. I told them, I prayed and I received this answer from God for what I should do. And I explained to them the decision that I was going to make. And this person kind of thought it was a bit silly. Like, they laughed at me a little bit, to be honest. Which quite upset me, actually. They didn't mean it, of course, but their reaction was kind of one of, maybe they didn't think it was such a clever decision. Maybe they thought God didn't speak to me. So I was reflecting on that conversation, and I felt almost, I started doubting, did God really speak to me? This person who's close to me told me maybe it's not a good idea. So I reflected on that, and I was praying about this. I was quite confused in this situation. And while praying, I thought, you know what, maybe God wants to speak to me through a reading, and my Bible was near me. So I picked up my Bible and I opened it to a random page, and I read about Nebuchadnezzar's second dream in Daniel chapter 4. So in this story, Nebuchadnezzar, who's the great king of Babylon, has a dream, and he dreams of a huge tree. And this tree is even bigger than the earth itself. It provides for all the animals, all the creatures. It has beautiful leaves, beautiful fruit. It's very like a prosperous, huge, very healthy, strong tree. And in this dream, he sees a spiritual being come down from heaven and order for the tree to be cut down, leaving only the stump. And this spiritual being says in his dream that the man who this tree represents will live like an animal for 7 years. I'm just kind of briefly explaining this story to you. Of course, you can read it in more detail. But so Nebuchadnezzar wakes up. He's quite distressed by this dream. And he calls all the wise men. Of course, the wise men don't know what the dream means. And he calls Daniel, who knows what the dream means. And Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar that the tree represents Nebuchadnezzar. And that Nebuchadnezzar, the name is quite mouthful. Nebuchadnezzar has become a powerful king, a great powerful king. But if Nebuchadnezzar doesn't acknowledge the hand God has on Nebuchadnezzar's life, giving him what he's received, this great power, then God will cause him to lose his intelligence, become like an animal, living like an animal for 7 years, for him to learn that lesson and to learn that God has control of all human affairs and this kind of thing. And God can easily take his kingdom away at any point. And so Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar that he should atone for his sins and, in order to defer this sentence, basically. A year later, Nebuchadnezzar is looking over Babylon from his rooftop garden, and he thinks, wow, I'm such a great king to have, made this great empire I'm really proud of myself, actually, that I did all of this. And at this moment, the prophecy comes true, and he lives like an animal for 7 years, eating the grass. You can see him eating the grass. And so after these 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar receives his intelligence again, his reason, and he praises God, thanking God for everything that God has given him. And he receives his kingdom back, and now it's more prosperous than even before, because he realizes that, God is the Lord of all creation and all human beings. So, we can learn many things from this story, but for me, when I read this story, thinking about this answer that God had given me and kind of doubting it, I felt God was telling me, kind of humbling me, saying, I've given you this answer. I'm your heavenly parent. I'm the God of all creation. I'm your creator. I'm God of the universe. I'm the cosmic parent. Why are you doubting me? Even though, maybe this one person might have thought the decision was silly, but actually this is the answer that I've given you, and so you shouldn't doubt the guidance that I give you, basically. So that's the first story. Then in December, I was praying for an answer again, and I attended the Christmas harp service given by Benjamin Oki Vicencio. He is a second gen from the South London community. And he gave a talk titled Legacy. In this talk, there was a section where he spoke about our relationship with God. And he said a few things which struck me. So I'm just going to put them up here. What if I have to just carry on serving for months or years before I can hear an answer? Why do I always feel the need to hear an answer right away? Maybe God doesn't answer my prayers right now because I'm not ready. Perhaps God doesn't trust me yet. So, considering where I was in my state of mind when I heard this talk, I was like, wow, I think that's for me. I felt like I needed to reflect on my attitude, because I thought maybe I'm being a bit prideful expecting an answer from God on this specific thing. So, and looking back on 2022, I felt I'd made a lot of progress, but at some point along the way, I became a bit prideful. And I felt God had been working with me quite directly to a certain point, but then it kind of felt like God now was saying, okay, I'm going to step back and I'm going to see if you can keep being faithful without me giving you signs all the time, or without me giving you answers. Can you still be faithful? And can you still continue and persevere? After hearing this talk and reflecting, I've made a new determination to do things unconditionally for God, even if I don't receive answers all the time, and to become someone God can rely on. And so instead of this, I felt the cycle should be more like this. It's progress leading to a realization, and then leading to me making a new determination, and so on. And interacting with God at every stage. I think someone should put that in the divine principle. That was my conclusion at that point. So, the next reflection I want to share is just more of a general reflection about a habit that I saw myself falling into throughout 2022, which is, I felt many times I would fall into a burdened state of mind when confronted by responsibility in different forms, but a lot to do with, I suppose, my responsibility as a second gen, reflecting on that, my responsibility in my family, to my community, and to my friends. And often I would start thinking, having the kind of thoughts like, everything is on my shoulders, or I have to be the one to fix this, or to save this person, or to save this situation, or this all depends on me, kind of thinking in this state of mind, which actually, reflecting on that, is actually quite a selfish state of mind to fall into. It's almost like an ego trap, but I didn't realize this at the time. And when I began to observe this habit, I realized that whenever I was feeling like this, whenever I was thinking like this, I began to feel more far away from God. And so when I realized that, I thought, hold on, even though these thoughts may seem kind of righteous or kind of, sincere, like, oh, I've got to take responsibility. Maybe it seems like that, but actually if I'm feeling far away from God, there's something wrong here. And I felt this quite intensely during the winter workshop prayer night. So over the 2022 to 2023, I was on the winter hop workshop, and we always have a prayer night. And so I was praying, and I felt quite strongly like so many people have suffered and sacrificed so much just for me to be here. And I was kind of thinking about that and feeling quite sorry, actually. But then eventually I started feeling like, who am I to be deserving of their suffering and sacrifice? Like, how can I ever live a life that's worthy of that? Maybe I should not even try, basically. But I caught myself here, and I realized that the better way to see this is that, yes, a lot of people have suffered and sacrificed a lot for me to be here, but I should be grateful for that, actually. I'm lucky and privileged to be alive. I'm lucky to have a relationship with God and to be a part of history. I didn't do anything to deserve it, and so I should react with gratitude. And instead of feeling weighed down by responsibility, let me honor the gift of life, and let me do my utmost best to live a life that pleases God and that my ancestors can be proud of. So my conclusion was that a gift is much easier to carry than a burden. And speaking of the winter harp workshop, I was a team leader, and I just want to share a small experience where I felt I could experience God's heart a little bit. Yeah, we always have challenge day on harp workshops, and it's quite self-explanatory. You go through the day as in your team, and you do different challenges together, try to get points to win challenge day, but also it's just for the sake of bonding as well as the workshop goes on. And yeah, there was one challenge my team did which was quite difficult. It really tested our unity, and I had to give all my energy basically to encourage them to keep going and to unite and to invest in the challenge. And we were doing this challenge for nearly an hour. And it was just an activity on a harp workshop, but it was actually quite emotionally intense for me. And looking at my team, I felt a lot of love for them, despite how hard it was for me to basically keep encouraging them. And I just really desperately wanted them to succeed and to believe in themselves. But as a team leader, I couldn't show any signs of giving up because, of course, I'm the person who they're supposed to look to for support and to rely on. And yeah, there's only so much I could do, really, apart from encouraging them. And it was really up to them what kind of attitude they were choosing to have. So yeah, I was reflecting on this experience, and I felt maybe this is like the heart of God when he looks at us. And I felt like, yeah, maybe life is like one big challenge, and God is trying desperately to encourage us and to uplift us. And God really wants to have hope in us and wants us to believe in ourselves. But there's only so much God can really do in reality, and we have our own responsibility. And so it's difficult for God because we're often maybe non-responsive or not so aware of God's heart. But despite this, God's love for us and God's position towards us means that God can't give up hope, ever, no matter how difficult it is. That was meant to be the slide. Okay. So I want to share another reflection from January this time. Yeah, I had a difficult conversation with someone who I care about a lot, and I felt quite pained by some of the things they were sharing with me. And so after this conversation, I was thinking a lot, what should my position be towards this person, and how can I turn around the pain that I'm feeling? And so, yeah, the evening of that day, I was sitting in a park near my house, and I was praying, and it was the evening. While I was praying, I looked up into the sky, and I saw one star. I don't know if you can see that. So I saw this one star. It's actually the photo I took. I saw this one star shining by itself in the middle of the sky. I couldn't see any other stars. And I was looking at the star and I felt that it was trying to tell me something. Maybe I sound a bit crazy right now, but I felt it was trying to tell me something. Yeah, so I was thinking, how do I figure this out? And I took out my phone and I searched up articles on how a star forms. So I was reading about the formation of a star, right, on my phone in this park one evening. And I found something which I thought was quite inspiring. And so I'm going to give you a mini science lesson. Do bear with me. Maybe if you need to take notes, please do so. So every star begins as a nebula, which is a cloud of dust and gas. And then it becomes a protostar, and then a main sequence star. And after this, it can develop in different ways depending on the size. But I'm going to talk about a property of the main sequence star right now. So actually, about 90% of the stars in the universe are main sequence stars. And all main sequence stars are in a state known as hydrostatic equilibrium. Can you say that? Not bad. That was pretty good, actually. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful, kind of like Nebuchadnezzar. Hydrostatic equilibrium it means that the outward pressure of hot gas that makes up the star exactly balances the force of gravity which is trying to make the star grow smaller. So there's this pressure coming in and this pressure pushing out, as you can see in the diagram. So when a star is in this state, it's neither expanding nor shrinking. So the energy output is very stable, and it's almost like it's kind of self-regulating, actually. So here's some fun diagrams to illustrate. I nearly put more. I had to stop at 2. I nearly filled the screen with loads of these, but anyway, it's quite fun. So there's actually a particular star that is in this state, which you should know. Can you guess which star this is?
The sun?
Yeah, good job. So, yeah, the sun. So the sun is a main sequence star, and it's in this state of hydrostatic equilibrium. And it's going to remain in this state for billions of years. Some articles said 5, some said 10, either way, ridiculously long time. And yeah, so why am I telling you this? What does this all mean? So reading about hydrostatic equilibrium, I felt I want to become like a star that is in this balanced state, that no matter what pressures I encounter in my life, I can match it with a force from inside me. And this can allow me to be a stable, constant source of light for others, and I can radiate joy, right? And I also thought that, like this star that I saw that was all alone in the sky, I want to be someone who can radiate joy no matter how alone I might be, and no matter how many people around me might lose their sense of joy, so I can be joy for others as well. And as I was reading these articles, there was some interesting wording that I found, which I want to discuss. So, one article said, hydrostatic equilibrium is the battle between a star's own self-gravity versus its internal gas and radiation pressure. And in another article, there was a section titled, Star Strives for Equilibrium. It kind of sounds like a newspaper article, right? Star strives for equilibrium, read about it here. Yeah, so I quite like this wording. I felt like it kind of suggests it's not easy for a star to be in hydrostatic equilibrium, like it's a difficult task. And I felt like that's a good analogy because life often feels like a constant battle or constant striving to create harmony, to keep peace, to keep harmony. And this kind of suggests that the battle or the striving is an important and necessary component in the efforts to maintain a balance in life. So it's not supposed to be easy, basically, but that's what makes it meaningful. And thinking about the sun specifically, I was reminded of True Father's words, which I'll read to you now. The Moonies are those who can only gain their strength from Father, receiving his light and encouragement, then giving it out. But for Sunnies, it doesn't matter whether Father is present or not. Sunnies are dynamos themselves, giving out light to the world, whether I am here or not. In order to become a Sonny, you have to free yourself completely from all shackles and become a real, true entity. So this is my fifth and final point. I was just reflecting on all of these things, and I felt, as our parent, God needs us to feel joy, right? The child is the joy of the parent. And like Uncle Marshall was saying at the beginning of this service, it says in the divine principle, we know from the divine principle, we're made for the purpose of returning joy to God. And I couldn't find it, but I remember reading somewhere, in Hundercase, somewhere, that Father said that when we are miserable, God is miserable. And similarly, he's also said this: you can be so confident as to say that without me, God cannot be happy at all. So inherently from this, you can, how can I assume that how can I assume God is fine if I'm not fine, or God is indifferent to, me being miserable, basically? Because God is my parent, and I, as God's child, we're infinitely and deeply connected. And so it's important for me to remember that I'm not living my life alone, but I'm living my life with God. Everything I do is with God. And God has come to me in order to feel joy through my life. So maybe these seem like kind of random reflections, but I feel like it all comes together because I feel that in order for me to be a source of joy, I need to be able to have humility before God and be able to repent. I need to be able to see my historic position and my responsibility as gifts, which I'm eternally grateful for, see it as a blessing, and I should strive to understand and sympathize with the heart of God. And I feel like this helps to generate this closer heartistic bond with God, and therefore a deeper desire to bring joy to God through the way I live my life. So, this is the new diagram, hydrostatic equilibrium of life. Closer heartistic bond with God means I can match life's pressures and create a stable, regulated, self-regulated output of joy. So, I want to end with some more words from that same speech, from Father's speech about Sonnies. The path of suffering should not be distinguished by misery and tears. Rather, it should be embroidered with the joy of acceptance. Tragedy must be converted into joy. Unless you act, the ideal family, tribe, nation, and world will not come about. What will be your attitude? Will you try to dodge the suffering period, or will you plunge into it and convert it into joy? Let us pledge, I shall become the true child of our heavenly parent and be victorious along this path, so all mankind can ultimately dwell within the heart of God. Can you all say, I will be the joy?
I will be the joy.
Thank you for listening.